Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. Today we have a very, very special guest, one that has been so incredibly patient with the amount of times I've had to cancel. So I'm just very thankful she's here. Miss Shauna Lawless, how are you today and tonight for you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Sort of on the wind down now, looking forward to Christmas. So yes, in good form and in a good mood, and yeah, looking forward to the interview.
So where in particular are you coming from tonight? A lot of people who are watching are either in the UK or in the US. Well, Ireland's UK though, still.
Well, Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom. The south of Ireland's not.
Okay.
So some people trip over that. Um, yeah, but yeah, so I'm from the north of Ireland, so still in the UK. Yeah.
That's incredible. So just I find this so fascinating. So I'm sorry if there's a million questions like this, but I find the culture and the difference. It's fun. I've always looked at differences such as like people's day to days in other countries, something that I'm very fascinated in. So it's 3 p.m. here on the Eastern time zone of the United States. What time is it where you're at?
It's 8 p.m. over here.
8.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
okay.
near nighttime. Yeah.
Oh, so I thought I had it wrong. It is 5 hours. I don't know.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was a time change over there, I
There
feel like.
was. Yeah, yeah,
And
there that
then
we changed like by an hour every autumn and then back then every spring. So yeah, it catches people out whenever that time switch happens.
it will never be something I'll master because I'll, you know what I mean? It's like I've tried. So I think I'm gonna put my energy into just, hey, I just want to make sure this is the time and place. But it's so fascinating to me. Is it very country? When I think of Ireland, I think of, I hate to say it, but well, I don't know if I hate to say it, but maybe it's like a cliche to think that the Lord of the Rings, right? Vast valleys of green and hills.
Yeah, well, that is a bit like where I live because I live close to an area called the Mourne Mountains. So we have mountains, but we're also right beside the sea. So I live in a very beautiful part of Ireland. Uh, it's sort of green fields and mountains and hobbit land almost. I love it. I love where I live.
That's so awesome. And it's not, I don't mind where I live either, but there's a lot of the, I used to always say and maybe be a little ungrateful for where I live because I don't live in a city. It's, how would I explain it? It's not mountainy, it's hilly. They're not big enough to call mountains, but we're right at the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains, which is,
Oh, right.
kind of like
Okay.
a chain of mountains in the US. And, yeah, I enjoy it. It's not crazily, overpopulated. So I like to hear that people love where they live, and especially I know a lot about why you write what you write, and I can't wait to kind of dive into it. But it has a lot to do with your love of the land, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of Irish history and a lot of Irish mythology in my stories. So yeah, like I mean that's the cool thing about Ireland is that we there's lots of very old things here. So like just a few mile up the road there's an old tomb that's like thousands of years old and it's just like randomly in the middle of a field that you can just walk to and they're
Wow.
everywhere. Like there's loads of places like that. But if you just go off the beaten track a little bit, you'll find um like old dwellings that are like underground or tombs, and there's lots of like ring forts and crannogs still around.
Let's
So kind
go.
of the history is very much everywhere.
That's very, very cool. So I had a little bit of an introduction, and please fill in where I missed because I try to get everything. So you're represented by Ed Wilson, and honestly, who isn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow, the
yeah,
guy represents a lot of wonderful authors.
he does. Ed Wilson is a fantastic agent. If you're ever lucky enough to get him, he knows he knows his job very, very well, and he has a lot of fantastic science fiction and fantasy authors as well.
Yeah.
Um, so he's a very good person to have in your corner.
Ah, absolutely. Head of Zeus.
Yes, so they are my UK publisher. although they were acquired by Bloomsbury a few
Didn't
years
know that.
ago. Yeah, so Bloomsbury USA is actually my American publisher now, even though Head of Zeus, I'm sort of under the Head of Zeus umbrella as well.
That's very cool. I always like those details because it's not something that's just out there, and so it's very cool that your experience that you're speaking on that. Nominated for best debut in the British Fantasy Awards. That's how cool was that? Like that was for your first book, which is The Children of God and Fighting Men, right?
Yes. Yes, that's really cool. Because I think when my book came out, so it was in 2022, definitely romantasy was already huge. Cozy fantasy was sort of rising as well. And I think it was definitely at a time where if you weren't in those genres, it was hard as a debut to kind of get noticed. Um, like I definitely think, there's definitely less epic
Mm,
fantasy out at the minute. And then I do historical fantasy, so that's even sort of more niche again. So when my book came out, I did feel a little bit like, there was lots of books coming out that got like huge amounts of attention, and they're all fantastic book and they all deserve lots of attention. Um,
it's a
but
hard thing.
it's a little bit hard, to be noticed. So whenever I was nominated for that award, it was lovely actually because um, you could see that people were beginning to pick up the book and to notice it.
Yeah, I see it all over the place. And the first thing, and I think a lot of people, covers. Your cover is just the font, and then not the font. I think caught my eye first, and then just the filigree and the gold highlights and the axe up top and the sword all
Yeah.
around. I couldn't pinpoint one thing, but I love all of your covers. They're incredible. Do you want to shout the author or the artist?
The Yeah, so she is wonderful. She is called Michaela Alcano. And if you were to like look up her website, you will see so many books that like she designs covers for just so many people now, and they're all amazing and beautiful. So I know she incorporated like a lot of suppose the style is a little bit from the Book of Kells. So there's a lot of iconography from my books as well, and she just did an absolutely fantastic job. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's consistent. All three of your books belong together. Like they
Yes.
100% belong together. And the hardback special edition, we'll get there. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. John, that's I didn't notice that, dude. Our backgrounds, our bookshelves line up. Look at that. We planned it. We planned it.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I see that.
I didn't catch it at first. John catches everything. Thankful you guys are here. Shane, so good to see you here. Damien, it's not after midnight. Yeah, so I believe Damien, you're in the UK too. Yes, I usually do like 8:30 p.m. here, which is way too late for the UK. Although I do have quite a few UK viewers at night, which is like must be the night owls, right?
Yeah. Yeah, although,
Um,
do you know, I because I watch a lot of booktubers myself, and I actually don't mind. I miss the live sometimes, obviously, but I love to listen to the chats when I go for my walks. I just put it on like my phone when I'm walking, and I love to listen to conversations between
Perfect
authors.
idea
And
for a walk.
yeah, it's perfect. It's just like listening to like a lovely conversation.
And what I love, and we talked about it a little bit before we came on, and all the people here know that I'm certainly not an expert reader or like a super veteran reader. So anytime I speak to anybody like an author such as yourself, I learn so much. So I look for that in other channels as well. So if I'm on a walk or in the car most of the time, and my wife's like, turn it off. My kid's in the back, I can't hear it anyway.
Yeah.
But I love to just listen and learn. And that's really what I try to do with these interviews. It's like learning somebody personally and then also why they wrote. So I know you've told us some things about yourself, kind of where you live, but is there anything else that you would like to just tell us about yourself? Kind of hobbies or family stuff, anything like that? If not, we'll move on.
Well, I suppose a lot of people will say that the theme of motherhood is a strong theme in my books. So I've got three boys, which is amazing. I love being a mother. So, see, between being a mother though and being an author, that is all my time. There are no other hobbies. There's no
Sure.
time for like even reading. Like I would describe myself as a prolific reader, but this year I haven't read very much, just because the writing has completely taken over. So
So,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so kind of like a good reason that you're not reading. You're
Yes,
busy. You're
yes.
busy doing work.
I'm very, very busy. So next year I'm trying to be a bit more organized, because I don't like that I don't have time to read. It's beginning to grate on me a little bit. But yeah, I'm just busy at the minute.
So, does what does reading do for you? Is it something that you enjoy, the kind of the escapism? I know that's an overused word, but I very much feel that that's what I do. Or is it something that helps you think, you learn? What is it for you?
Oh gosh. I think like from I was very young, I read always. Um, and I just would find myself very immersed in the stories I was reading. You know, like I would be one of those people that would read a book and somebody would be calling your name and I can't hear them. I'm completely like zoned out and engrossed in the book. Um, and I suppose when you're a young person and your life is quite small because you're living with your parents and like in a small community, books just really were this gateway to all these other worlds and cultures and ideas. And I literally read anything and everything I could get my hands on. So, like nonfiction, fiction, anything. And I still really, really enjoy that, and seeing what other people are thinking and what they're up to and what new
Yeah.
discoveries are and
Every
all of that.
person that writes differently. Like they could say the
Yeah.
same exact story, and everybody's is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everyone has different perspectives and their opinions will come into the story, and people have different writing styles too and different ways that they want to convey a story. And that's always interesting as well.
It's so fascinating. My wife's watching, and so now there's officially backup proof that if she's yelling my name and I'm reading, that it's not my fault. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just you.
We also have three boys.
Oh,
We
do
have a
you?
5-year old, a 4-year old, and a 2-year-old boy, and a 1-year-old girl.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
That's
so
so,
we're
so
very
lovely.
busy. And
Yeah, I mean, it is like it's going to be the busiest you'll ever be when you have kids that age.
if I didn't lose my hair when I was like 18, 19, 20, it would definitely be gone by now. But you know,
Yeah.
it was gone a long time ago. So I like to tell my kids, I was like, look, you're not the reason daddy's hair's gone. But if I still had hair when I had you, no, I'm just joking. I would never say that to them. But yes, it's the nobody can prepare you for it, but it's a huge blessing and so beautiful.
Yes,
My
that's
mama got a
exactly
girl,
how I feel too.
and it's so funny. Like all boys are different, all three of my boys, and I'm sure yours as well. They're all
Yeah,
three different. And
very different.
then we threw a girl in, and they're way different. So it's just fun. It's kind of like uh, standing back and watching as they grow up a little bit. I heard a quote just the other day that like broke my soul. It was my favorite thing about being a parent is watching them grow up. My least favorite thing about parenting is watching them grow up. Is like
Yeah,
yes, you see those baby pictures and it just breaks
I
me.
know. Do you know, because mine are a bit older. My children are 14, 11, and 9. And like now, like I never used to look at the baby photos and get upset because they all were young. And now all of a sudden, I think it's because my 14-year-old is now shut up and getting really tall. I am starting to see baby photographs and really feeling sad.
Oh yeah,
You know, it feels
instant
like a
tears.
long time ago now that he was a baby.
Yeah, it's like I had you right here, and all of a sudden you're telling me to shut up, and I want to come knock you out.
Oh,
Um,
well, he's not that bad yet. We haven't quite reached kind of grumpy teenager zone yet, but he's well, it's cool though too because you can have very deep conversations with him at this age, and he has his own ideas and opinions, and that's really cool too because he's cool. I like to chat to my children, and I think if for me that's like a parenting win. um,
Yeah.
if you enjoy your kids' company and you enjoy conversing with them, so um, that's nice.
Yeah, so I hadn't thought about it particularly the way that you said it. I love one of those deep conversations, especially if it's about a certain theme or morals, values. So now that's something I'm even more so looking forward to. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. Let's see over here in the comments. I want to make sure I haven't missed nothing. Oh, so you are in the UK. Catch up. Awesome, awesome. Glad you're here. JC Eiler, what's going on, brother? Did writing change what you enjoy about books?
Mm. Um, I think the only thing is, and it's also true for when I watch TV, is that when you write, you can see things getting set up. So sometimes, you can read a book and like very quickly, you know exactly what's going to happen. You can see all the significant details that are being kind of fed to you as
Hmm.
such. So like I used to be able to just read a book and I wouldn't even think about where the plot was going. I would just sort of read along. Whereas now, like sometimes I can just sort of see what the author wants to do.
Kind of took the
And
blinders off a little bit to the
yeah,
kind of, now you're in the process, it systematically, and you see what the author's trying to do, and I get that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, not always, but like sometimes. And it was funny. I was actually I was watching John Wick 4 with my oldest son.
Heck yeah.
And I told him, like, exactly what the ending was gonna be, like, halfway through the movie, and it was hilarious because I was completely right, like, even down to, like, what John Wick would say.
Is he like, Mom, come on, I don't have
Yeah,
those tricks yet?
yeah,
That's so
um,
funny.
yeah, so I was like, "I won't do that again," but, yeah, but, like, I can sort of I can see kind of what other writers are doing, I guess, and sometimes
No,
that's annoying.
no, I that makes a lot of sense. So I always love the part of the interview where I get to learn somebody's journey, as far as when did you kind of, as far as how back you remember and kind of the age that you were starting to this reading journey, or just your love of literature. How did that start for you?
I think it started before I can even remember, like, I was always reading, it was always my favorite thing to do. For birthdays and for Christmases, I was always asking for book vouchers and books, and I loved going to the library. It was sort of my thing. And my mum, she was always a good reader, so there was always books in the house as well. And she would always take me to the library whenever I wanted to go and things like that. So, um, and then also actually my granny on my father's side, she wrote stories as well. So we even had the stories that she wrote in the house, and I would read them as well.
That's very cool. I'm always a little jealous when I hear those types of stories because, great mom and dad. I had a great childhood, but neither of them were readers.
Yeah,
So in turn, I wasn't really, I don't want to read books. In fact, like I said, until I was 29, nothing. They had no want to. I always kind of wished that my imagination would have started growing a little earlier, but now I get to surround my kids with, Dad, did you get a package today? Is it a book? Like, that's legitimately about the only thing that I get in the mail anymore.
yeah,
So they'll get to be around those things, and I hope that
yeah,
they get the same experience that you did, and so many others.
yeah, yeah. And I honestly think reading is really important for achievement in all areas of academia. Improving your literacy and being able to understand what the question's actually asking, to reading between the lines in a question, having good like literacy and like reading, being able to read quickly is
Ooh,
a really good skill. Like
yeah.
I think reading's so important.
I remember taking tests in like high school, and I didn't struggle to read, but to comprehend what you're reading is a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
And that is a muscle that needs to be built. At least for me, it was.
yeah, yeah.
I
I
used to
completely
read
agree.
things, and I never remembered anything. And now I guess finding what you like to read and what I like to read, it helps with that. But it's a little bit of a built skill.
Yeah, like it completely is. Just because you've learnt to read doesn't mean you're a good reader, if that kind of makes sense.
No,
Because reading is not just like the sequence of the words, it's understanding what the sentence is trying to tell you as well.
and thank goodness for that, because through one piece of writing I can get excitement or action and that sort of thing, but to differentiate that sort of writing with a meaningful thematic or uh, a mythological based book in which there's a real story behind the story
Yeah,
um, is so fun for me, and to be able to decipher those is very important. So you
yeah.
started reading young as a kid and fell in love with reading and really never stopped. And what at what point did you say, "Hey, I think I want to write"?
I started writing writing stories really young as well.
Okay.
So I would write stories probably from I was about 7 onwards. They were mostly about animals. Um, and basically, I used to really love this series of books called The Animals of Farthingwood, which no one in America has ever heard of, but they were quite big over here because there was a cartoon series as well that went with them. So I like to write about animals. And then when I was about 18, 19, I wrote my first novel, which I've lost. I can't find it anymore. I don't know where it
Oh,
is. Um, but like that's fine because I had a huge big gap then of not writing anything because I kind of got a job, I went traveling, got married, had children. And so I still read in those years, but I didn't really write. I kind of didn't feel I had enough time to do it. And it wasn't until I kind of got to 30 that I really started to miss writing stories. And I kind of decided, right, we need to make time consistently to do this.
so may I ask, if is that all you do now? Is that your main job, is writing? Are you able to do that full time?
Well, I handed in my notice at my job on the 31st of December 2022. And what I said to myself was, I'm going to give myself 2 years to see if I can do this because I did get an advance for my trilogy. And it was like, it's not like this huge big advance or anything, but previously to that, I was working and I had like quite a lot of childcare costs.
Oh,
Um, so really even though I had a good job, my net income was quite low. So whenever I kind of weighed it up when I had this advance that I could save, but it meant I could stay at home and not have any childcare costs, it kind of became a feasible thing that I could do. And I just said to my husband, look, we'll do it for 2 years. If it doesn't work out, I can always just get another job. There's no problem with that. And if we're at any stage we struggle, I'll just go and get another job. So I'm sort of at the end of the 2 years now. And I'm still able to do it. We've extended the 2 years to 3 years because I got another trilogy deal with Head of Zeus
okay.
for with the Gael song. So as kind of everything's going well at the minute.
That's amazing. I'm glad that you went into that, because it really answered what I was after. Is like, you wanted to write again and you made the commitment to say, "Hey, 2 years, if it's not going in the way I want it to, back to what I was doing." I'm so happy, first of all, that it's going the way that you want it to, because that's the dream. And
Yeah,
second of all, I just want to say that's awesome that you shared that with us, because that is a realistic, like, in my head, it's like, how does somebody who doesn't write, of course, like all their life, like Stephen King, start this journey, right, as an adult with kids? And wow, you answered that so well, and that's so cool. um
well, do you know
wow.
what, I will caveat that though in saying that I stopped working once my first book was released. So I didn't quit my job to write without knowing I had a publishing deal. so there's like a slight just difference that I want to say, because obviously if you are leaving your job just to write full time without knowing that you've got any money coming in, like that's a much bigger leap of faith that you would need to take, because there's no guarantees that you will get an agent. There's no guarantees that your agent will even be able to sell your book to a publisher. So yeah, I did wait until I had the publication deal before I kind of decided to do that.
That sounds. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, having kids and stuff is something that I think was responsible, and I think that it's super brave. I think that's amazing. So first of all, congratulations, and second of all, thank you for sharing that with us, because that had to be a little scary.
Um, well, do you know what? Do you know? And I say this to let's keep it real here. So I live in the north of Ireland. So here we have the NHS. So we have like free healthcare.
Uh,
There's no, we don't need like insurance or anything. Where I live in the north of Ireland, there's no private schools, so school education here is free
okay.
up until university, and then you have fees then. Um, and also, I suppose I quit my job. I must have been 38 at that point. So I had worked for a long time, and I'm married, and my husband worked, and so I did feel that it was something I could consider doing for a couple of years. But I know not everyone is in that position. I don't know, say, for example, if like you're dependent on healthcare, it's a much bigger decision to leave your job
Yeah.
for other people. But yeah, so, but I also, like, me and my husband, we're very much like, you live, you work to live, you don't live to work. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Love that.
you have to try to do things. You can't play it safe all the time. And if things don't work out, you can just, you'll get another job. There's never
Yeah.
anything that's going to be awful.
No, no, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I like that you also brought in the difference in kind of how things are there compared to here, because one of the things is create. I just started a new medication, and of course, here in the U.S., it's like outrageous to have medication, and $40,000 a month if I had to pay it out of pocket. So
That's
that just shows you
crazy.
the difference between the
Yeah.
lifestyles, and um, I can't comment too much on any other kind of like country's way of doing things because I'm not there to see how everything works. But it seems a little nuts to that somebody would have to work just to stay living, kind of deal. But
Yeah.
that's a realistic part of life for some people, especially here in the U.S. So, um, yeah, the thing that came to my mind was a responsible leap of faith.
Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, like I do have, my three children, and they come first. If they were struggling at all, I would be looking for a job tomorrow. And
Mama
that's the
bear.
reality. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
So
mama bear.
when I was younger, I would very happily eat toast all month round,
Yeah,
if I wanted to. But you can't do those things with kids. They need to eat properly, they need their clothes.
for
Uh, you
sure.
know, yeah.
And it's funny. I used to live off in college, the little time that I was there because I got sick. But ramen, like just ramen, that was it.
Yeah.
Just the hard noodles you put in water and flavor it. Just, but yeah, I would never be like, hey, I could never let my kids do that. Like if that's
No.
something they want to do at 30, let them do it. But not while you're
Yeah.
under my
No, no,
roof.
no.
I totally get that.
No,
So as
no,
far as your
definitely not.
publishing journey goes, like when you were did it take long to find an agent and then get your trilogy sold, or however it worked for you, or was that something you spent a long time doing?
Well, go to be traditionally published is a slow process. And yes, it can take quite a while to find an agent, and then it can take an agent a while to find a publisher. It happened a bit oddly for me in that my first when I started writing in my 30s, I wrote a book. It was awful. But I kind of stuck with it and learned to edit. So when I had finished editing, it still wasn't publishable. So I started a new book, which ended up being The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. So once that was finished, I mean, I probably all in all submitted to maybe about 30 to 40 agents.
Mhm.
Um, and I did it in batches of 10 to 12 just to kind of see, did I get any feedback? So in my third round of submissions, I'd sort of polished everything. And in that round, I actually ended up getting 3 or 4 agents were interested then in representing me. But also, really randomly, Head of Zeus did an open submission. So if you were an unagented author, you could send to them directly for a period of a couple of weeks. And it was for science fiction and fantasy. So randomly, they also then made me an offer of publication. So what I did then was, with the agents who had made me an offer as well, I kind of interviewed them and talked to them uh,
Wow.
to see who I'd kind of gelled with, which was Ed. Um, but I was lucky in a sense that my publication deal was already it already been offered, so all Ed had to do was improve the terms of the contracts. Um, so yeah, so for me it wasn't too long. But then I
I
also think I wrote like that first novel for about 4 or 5 years that went nowhere. But for me, that wasn't a waste of time. For me, that was really learning to write.
Yeah. Wow. Couple things. I've literally never heard anybody say that they got to interview who they wanted their agent to be. I'm like shocked. Like from what I understand, it's very hard to get one agent and you take that agent if you get it.
Yeah, well, I think it is hard. I don't know, I just got lucky with this kind of batch of agents that they all say, I think historical retellings had sort of suddenly come into vogue, and then suddenly what I was pitching was
Okay.
maybe what the agents were on the lookout for. Yeah, so that was weird though, because I had gone, like, previous submission rounds, you're like begging for an agent, like you're like, please somebody pick me. And it's weird then to have like about 3 or 4 agents, and then you're asking them questions.
Yeah, they're
um
like, what's going on here? Like this doesn't happen very often, but that's so cool that I get to hear that experience and that you had the experience and the people are learning about it, who are watching and who will watch in the future because that's not something I've heard. And I've talked to hundreds of people and that's the very first time. So that's a very unique, and I'm going to guess that it has a lot to do with the way that you write too, because you're one hell of a writer, I have to say.
oh, well, thank you very much.
Of
It's very
course.
nice of you to say so.
Um, so that's the publishing, and so still ahead of Zeus. And all right, so I was talking out loud. Sorry. So for those who aren't familiar with, I hope I'm saying it right, the Gael song
Yeah.
series, what would you have to say to them? A little bit of an elevator pitch, if you would.
Okay, so it's historical fantasy. So it is set in 10th century Ireland, and it follows the real history of the time. But I have also interwoven Irish mythology into the story. So there are some characters who have magical powers, which are derived from our Irish mythology stories. So we have fire magic, we've got witches, we've got druids, warriors, healers, harpists, cupbearers. So lots of cool magic going on, but kind of being told within the history of the time.
That's so cool. And that's what really made me gravitate towards wanting to read your work is I love history, I love fantasy, and I think there's so many of us like that. Um, so to have somewhat of a recognizable through history story or feel the surroundings, um, the terminology, but to also have that fantastic element really brought it home. And you did that really well. In relationships, I wanted to make sure I think that you have a way of building relationships and realistically too, like the sisters. It's like that's what sisters would kind of sound like. Uh, you know, good times and bad.
Yeah. I think for me, because I was adding fantasy elements into the story, everything else had to be really real. Uh, it had to feel very grounded. in reality, and so I wanted the relationships to feel true. So yeah, so the sisters love each other, but they don't agree with each other.
Mm,
Um, you know, like the two main female characters have children, and or like nephews and nieces that they're like raising as their own, and those relationships need to be real as well. So it's not a story that has rose tinted glasses.
mm,
It's the truth of what those relationships can be like. They can be beautiful and wonderful, but they can be hard and difficult as well.
mm.
And so yes, I wanted always to show that.
It was absolutely one of the first things that I knew I truly enjoyed about the first book. Um, let's see here. Oh, themes. You explore some themes in your work, and could you name a couple of them? Maybe some that are super important to you.
So I think one of them is like I'd say being a mother, but it's really being a parent. Because
Mm,
I think a lot of men have commented me about that theme. So I think I think we'll include them as well. It's kind of being a parent and loving your child, and how do you love your child? What do you want for them? Is it that you want them, just them, to succeed in a world that's hard, or do you want to try to improve the world that they live in to make it better for everyone?
mm.
And so we have these two very different approaches from the female characters as to what they want for the children in their lives. I think another theme is death as well. It
Yeah,
would be one of the big themes in my book.
parenting and
Um, mm,
so I was just writing things down. Yeah, I totally agree that that stands out, and it's realistic. Again, that just comes back to me saying that again. It feels real because not life is there's pretty and nice points, but there's those moments that are unsufferably hard or difficult to deal with or dark or even relationships that have to cease to exist for certain reasons or and I've come to enjoy those darker elements about books, not dark as in like I don't know, I guess you just everybody's got their own rendition of what dark is, but realistic.
yeah,
um, it's authentic. There it is. That's the word I was searching for. Authentic.
yeah.
um,
I think because I like in real life, I can't watch anything that's scary. I don't like watching things that are sad.
mm,
Um, and my mom actually, because she's read all my books, and she did say to me, like, she's like, Shauna, you're, obviously your books can be quite sad sometimes, and
mhm,
I don't understand how you can like not want to watch things that are sad. But I think for me, it is like because like there is sadness within us all. There's like we've all endured hardships and bad things have happened to us, and in some ways, I think the sadness in my stories is me trying to explain my feelings to myself.
mm. Yes.
Um, yeah, so I'm kind of like pushing, pushing those feelings out and trying to explain them to myself and to the readers, I guess.
Well,
Yeah,
it translates. It does, and I think that's cool too. Not a lot of writers. I'd say maybe 50-50. Of course, that's probably not even close to accurate. I would just be guessing, but parents either read everything that their kids wrote, kind of how you said your mom read your stuff, or they don't.
yeah,
And to have that experience and kind of have that feedback from your mother must be very important, very cool.
yeah, yeah. She really enjoys them. Like she loves them, and she reads them a lot because she also proofreads for me. Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, so she reads it once to kind of chat about the story with me, and then she'll read it again once it's gone through all the edits with the publisher to kind of try and catch any lingering typos for me. So she's very good.
Wow,
I'd be lost without her.
that's a very unique relationship. That is so cool, very special.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you edit? I feel like I heard somebody or read something that you edit as well.
No,
No,
no.
you don't. Okay, I don't know
Well,
where I heard that.
maybe like I talk about self-editing a lot. So about how maybe you've heard me say this, but writing and editing are like two different skill sets. Um, and my first drafts of my books are disgusting. I call them vomit drafts because, like, if you ever read like a first draft of my book, you would not believe it was me. But it's really just me like throwing ideas on the page, and often it's just dialogue. Like there's literally nothing else. It's just me trying to imagine the scenes between the characters. And so I kind of have to lure up the story afterwards, and then at the very end, I edit the prose to make the prose nice. So for
Okay.
me, like it's writing and editing are kind of two separate things, and they both, for me, take almost equally as long.
Ooh, I think you made a great point because I hadn't even, so I do want to eventually publish a book, whether that be indie or whatever it is at that time that I want to do or try to do. But it isn't until you really try to keep a cohesive story with continuity, and it's super hard, man. Like it's hard, and what I'm trying to say, obviously you know this, but I guess I'm speaking about my first impression of it as someone who found this a little bit later. It's impressive to see what a first draft, and I think it's also a great skill that you're able to put a first draft on paper sloppily, because me, I try to over perfect
Yeah.
everything and it takes me 4.5 years to get 2 sentences down. So to be able to not do that, especially with history being involved in your
Yeah.
story, that would add so much weight to my back. I would have to be perfect in everything. And obviously that has to change as I continue on this journey, but it's very cool that you can do that.
Yeah, I would, well, I suppose that's like maybe a bit of writing advice. Like I know a lot of people who can write really clean first drafts.
Hmm.
Um, that is just not me.
I think
And
that's Mark Lawrence.
yes, it is. Yeah, like because I would know Mark quite well, and that is him. Like he doesn't really do a lot of editing because what comes out obviously beautifully.
Yeah.
um, but that's just not how my brain works at all. And
I think a lot of
me,
us are like that.
yeah, my brain's is obviously quite messy. Another friend of mine is Ryan Cahill,
Hmm.
and we were talking about where we, because I always say that I am a pantser, but he is like, are you a pantser or are you writing a really long like plan?
Mm.
Like as in like your really disgusting first draft, is that actually your plan? And I
Hmm.
was like, well, that's interesting. Maybe that is it, because I feel that I don't want to give any chapter too much attention until I know the shape of the story and that it works. Because if you like have this beautiful chapter one and you go through your story, like, I mean, very easily you could realize that chapter one is the wrong place to start my story, and I've spent months perfecting it. Um, so for me, it like I just don't do that. I want to get the kind of the bare bones of the story down to make sure that I like it, and then almost like start again.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think that. Well, I'm sorry, I'm having a loss for words because I was going to ask you if you're a pantser or an outliner. So I'm trying to understand your process. You're more of a pantser, but at the end you may look back and say, "Is this a really long outline?" Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, that's how Ryan put it, because I always would have just said I'm a pantser. But he was like, maybe you're just like you're writing a really long plot document, because like my vomit draft is mostly dialogue and kind of setting up the scenes. Like is that character there? What are they doing? What's their motivations? And most of that comes through dialogue with like maybe just a couple of inner thoughts. So I guess so he said that to me and I was like, that's interesting. I don't know what I am now. I don't know.
I can see. I like a lot of. Oh, Senna said it. Right in between a planter.
Yeah, maybe.
Um, sorry, I've lost a. Here it is. Earlier, I forgot to pull this up, Senna. She wanted to know, have you read Water Babies? It was given to me by my English friend, and it's a favorite of her growing up.
Yes, I did read that years and years ago now. And there was also like I think a cartoon movie of that as well, which I used to watch too.
That's very cool. So I think for me, and just kind of relating to what you were saying is your process for writing, I tried the pantser thing because I think everybody who learns about who's been a pantser in the past, like, there's the Stephen Kings and the Mark Lawrences, and that sounds really cool to be that. I am not a pantser. Oh my goodness. I'll forget from one day to the next. And it's not even like, I mean, when I say forget, I forget. So what my brain has to do is, and I've related to a few different people on the channel with this, and that's kind of had it explained back to me, if that makes sense, the way I feel I'm going to have to write. And it's definitely going to be not super specific because I don't want to, shackle myself and not have that creative freedom to do what I want, but also have enough cohesive story and plot there that I don't go off on tangents.
Yes. And you know what's interesting about that? Because I know you said you thought the history part would be hard,
Mm.
but I have found the history element to be the spine of my story. So I can't really go too far off. There's because I stick quite close to the history, so it doesn't it doesn't let me take any mad tangents because I have to kind of stick to a known timeline.
So that means you're very familiar with the history of what
Yeah,
you're going to be writing then. Okay.
yeah,
Well, I think that's super important and so cool that you said that's kind of your point of view of where you start because I love history as well. And there's only certain things though that I could be like confident enough to keep as like what you said, the spine of my story, which kind of puts those gate or those fences on each side and says you can stay here because this is what's really happened. So it doesn't allow you to stray because you are confident in that
yeah,
history.
exactly. Yeah, and so I know somebody like recently asked me about would I do another historical fantasy series. And my answer kind of would almost be I don't know if I could because I don't know any other area of history really very well. I know Irish history really well, but I don't know history from other countries very well. And so I sort of, and if I was to do anything else, it would really, I think, just take me years and years to really immerse myself in history because it's not just kind of the dates on the page. It's you have to learn the culture, kind of the backdrop to the history that you're actually doing now, like what came before. It's like language, it's like the legal system, like there's so many things that you
Oh,
need to know about a culture to for the history to make sense you know
so maybe
y-
would you say that you would recommend if you want to do a historical fantasy in which history is the center of the story and to be very intimately familiar with that
yeah,
history?
I would say so. I mean, you like that's the thing. If you are writing something, you can stick very close to the history, or you can be quite loose with the history. You're in charge, and I think as long as the reader knows what you've done, I think it's fine. Um, but I think if you are using history, um, I think you've a responsibility, from my perspective, to tell it properly. Otherwise,
Yes.
there's no point using it. Why not then just do your own fantasy setting?
Yes.
Um, yeah. So that for me kind of so when I was doing this, that's ultimately why I ended up sticking very closely to the history then, because I anytime I went to deviate, it felt wrong, and I always ended up coming back.
I love that point. I absolutely love that because if you're going to do a historical fantasy history, I mean, to me, and again, like I'm nowhere near as well read as you or many other people, but I would feel the history comes first, and just call it a fantasy if it's not going to stick to a history very closely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that if I was going to do a historical fantasy, that is exactly, I would have to, like you said, the responsibility of keeping history correct and the feeling of it, the language, the law. There's lots to that. That's very deep.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have so much knowledge in that. What has been your favorite experience as a writer so far? And it could be about when you're writing or like special editions you've done or whatever it is for you.
Oh gosh, that's hard. Do you know the last like 2 years have really been amazing. It's just been incredible, like from having special editions, but also like walking into Waterstones, which would be our big bookstore here, and seeing my book on the shelves. That's always amazing. Like I always like can't quite believe that because you know when I was young, I got all these book vouchers for Christmas and for birthdays, and that was the store I went into. And for me to be in the store is really like it's just cool.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I could like, hey, I'm calling everybody. Like, dude, guess what I just found? Everybody. Like, I'm taking pictures. I'm gonna frame it.
yeah,
Like, here's proof.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
totally
So
get it.
that's just been it's all been really wonderful, and the special editions have been fantastic. Like I love what the Broken Binding did with
Oh,
them, and like it was sort of more than I could have expected, really, for my debut book coming out. So I really feel very lucky with my experience because I've enjoyed it so much.
will the Broken Binding ever do like a reprint of those? Are they still available at all? They're just gone, right?
They're gone. Yeah,
I'm
they're
so
they're gone.
sad.
Yeah.
That last, like, I've only seen the last one. What's the title of the third book?
So this is the third one here. This is The Land of the Living and the Dead. So
Is
that's my
that the?
special edition
Oh,
one.
that's those colors. Oh, they just set
Yeah,
it on fire.
yeah, they're lovely.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's been cool. I would like well, I suppose the sprayed edges is like a new thing. So for me, it's just like very cool to have them.
oh, yeah. I mean, any book that has a sprayed edge is awesome. But like, if it's mine or if it's if it's your own work, that is incredible. What an opportunity! You'll never forget that.
No,
I
no.
seen that picture too of that you posted when you were signing all of them. Did I always have to ask how long does it take to sign? How many copies did you have to sign?
So I had 500
Mhm.
for each book, but they send you more because um, sometimes they get damaged and stuff. So they
Yeah.
they send you maybe 600, I think, to sign. I'm very fast.
Okay.
So I think when I went to Bloomsbury offices in London to sign for the third book, I think I was there for 2 hours to sign the kind of 600
Wow,
pages.
that is fast.
Yeah.
Goodness. So what did that? I'm guessing that you practiced. Like, hey, I know this is going to take a long time, or was it just nope? I just knew how to do it.
Yeah, no, just like I have a very squiggly
You were
signature.
born with it.
Yeah,
Of course
yeah.
you were. Oh, that's so cool. Um, so what are you working on right now, and kind of what's next for you? What's in the near future?
So the next thing I have coming out is my third novella. So I have companion novellas to my main trilogy. So the third one should be coming out in March. And I'm also getting a physical edition of all three novellas. So that's coming out in March as well. So you'll be able to buy like the cover. I've seen it; it's amazing. It kind of ties in
Awesome.
with this series here, so you can own like a physical copy of the three novellas.
That's huge for
Um,
fans of yours because I want novellas. You know what I mean? If the
yeah,
novellas are there and I can read it on my e-reader, I have to have. If it's important to me, I have to have the physical.
yeah, yeah. So I'm really glad that because at the minute you can only read the first two on like a your Kindle. So I'm really looking forward to there being a physical edition of them. And I'm literally kind of finishing up the fourth book in the Gael song. So I got another trilogy deal from Head of Zeus. So the trilogy that is out at the minute, I would describe as Era One, and the next
Mhm.
trilogy is Era Two. So
Okay,
yeah, so I've just finished writing the first book in Era Two.
that is so cool. I'm so happy that yes, that there's another trilogy coming. I had no idea that you were adding on to the same the Gael song. I was
Yeah,
fuzzy on that point, so that's very cool to know.
yeah.
Do you have an estimated idea of when that would start coming out, the first book, or is that kind of
I yeah, I think my publisher's keen. I normally have September, October release months, so I think we're going to keep rolling with that um, for the fourth book.
oh, that's excellent. I'm so happy. That is so cool. Um, who would be, I haven't asked this in a while. It used to be one I asked all the time, but I wanted to know from you. Who is somebody you think that I would learn from? I'd have fun with chatting on the channel.
Oh, you have you had Mark Lawrence on yet?
Yeah,
Yeah,
once.
yeah. He's really
He
interesting
stumped
to
me the
talk
whole
to.
time. He's just
Yeah,
like all of these things that writers do, he's different. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So he
He's
was
he comes from like a really like science background. Uh, and like
NASA.
I talk to him like quite often about writing and different things, and yeah, he's just like, yeah, very focused, and like his writing comes out the way he wants it. Like I can't do that. Um, but he's lovely to talk to. So I think he would be. Have you had Anthony Ryan on?
Yep, I've had him a couple
Oh,
times. Honestly, I just like
you've
the
had everyone on.
well, I have everybody on again. I like to have people on multiple times. So I like
Yeah,
to kind of hear all sorts of writers and inspirations and who they like to talk to, and that just gives me more motivation to talk to them again. I remember talking to Ryan about something, and maybe I want to ask him if it relates to you too. Uh, the first book he wrote, there wasn't a lot of weight on it, and he was described, and you could tell he was really stressed. And it was a
yeah,
great interview, but you could tell that this was a stressed topic. That now everything in his life kind of is weighed upon how well this next book does. Especially, well, I know he's not an indie writer anymore. I don't know the ins and outs of the new publishing thing with him and Broken Binding, but at the time when I spoke with him, he was still an indie author. Uh, have you felt that weight?
um do you know what I would say is I'm very good at trying to insulate myself from expectations. And that's not to say Ryan's not good at doing that. But he's indie, and I think, that's probably a bit of the difference because he is his own sorry, promoter.
Yeah,
He is the designer, he's a marketer. He has to do everything. I kind of hand my book off to my publisher and they do lots of that stuff for me.
I
Sorry.
love that point that you're making too. And I love to talk the self-pub version of this process as well as the traditionally published process, and making that distinction and learning about both sides is so important. Something I put out and try to emphasize. So I'm glad that you touched on that.
Yeah, because I think that's where a lot of Ryan's, that expectation comes from because he feels responsible for everything.
Mm,
I don't, and so that is a distinction. But also, I've just maybe myself just really tried not to, because I think when you're an author, like there's such emphasis now on social media and being present and talking to people, and I love all of that. But I think it's also important that I tell the story that I want to tell,
mm.
and not let myself worry about telling the story I think people want me to tell
Oh
as
yeah.
well. And so I think I've then, like, it's my method of coping is I've sort of had to not worry about that. And the thing is, when you write a long series, it's just a fact. Every book that comes after sells less than the one before. So whenever I mean, that's why when you look at authors, they are doing trilogies or duologies now. It's
Yeah.
very rare that you get an author that is doing a long series, and it's for that reason. Like
Yeah.
with every new series you start, every new book, you have a chance for that book to go viral, right? Whenever you're
Yes.
doing a second book in a series, and say you've sold 50,000 books of book one, that's your market now. You need to sell your book two to those 50,000 people. And if 20,000 people read book two, you're selling your book three to 20,000 people.
Wow.
And, so that is the thing about being a long series author. And that is why I think as you get down the series, and like, even though I'm writing two eras, it is still within the same world. And that's always the worry. And I think you just have to accept that downward trajectory is there, and you
Mm.
have to hope that as the series progresses, that the word of mouth kicks in. And so, yes, you maybe had 50,000 people read book one last year, but maybe next year there'll be 100,000 people who will have read book one. Maybe the year after that will go up to 200,000, because um, people are beginning to talk about the series. So that's a plus side of writing a long series, if it takes off and if people gel with it. But that's not guaranteed. And a lot of authors that I know have spoken about writing trilogies, and by book three knowing that it's not done well, and so they're now essentially writing a book that they know not very many people are going to read,
Mm.
and that's difficult as well.
Wow. That's a great point. That is a realistic point. Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had never really thought of, I mean, I knew that there was a trajectory that goes down, but not necessarily the way that you put it. 50,000 people read book one. I have to sell book two, hopefully, to those 50,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the percentages are something like 50% to 75%, um, who read book one will read book two. And then, you know, that goes then maybe down to like 75% for book three. And then maybe once you get to book three, people generally stick with you because I suppose they've committed for this long. They want to find out how the story ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that trajectory is a real thing. And that's why I know people say like they don't want to read a series until it's finished. I get why people say that, because I know we've been burned
I,
by some authors who don't finish their series. But that's why that's not a good thing, is because, you know, that's why publishers don't do long series anymore, because they kind of can't
Fizz out.
afford to put the money into series and for them to fizz out. Yeah.
I had never really had a reason why or understood why people said I don't want to get into a series. I mean, I do. Don't get me wrong. I get like why if I start Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, like I know probably not going to get the last one, and that sucks. Maybe that's the only point of view I had into why someone may not want that. But I like how you put it. And wow, that's again a realistic point, and I kind of understand that now, and more so not just from like I hope to read the last book if it is put out, but why it won't be put out if it's not, and reasons it may not be. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing all of that, because that's very eye opening to me.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think that's why, whenever if you know someone who's a long series writer, why they start to get stressed towards the end of the series, because if, if it's not taking off, it can be hard. But I think, like, a lot of authors will know that, I don't know how am I going to say this. Sometimes the surge of readership comes at the end, like when people know, oh, this is the last book that's coming out. That's when you can suddenly get a lot of people on board. And I think if a big series is done well, there are not many of them, right? So it's actually then almost like a smaller market to be in. Not many people can write a 4, 5, 6, 7+ book series.
like the Wheel of
uh,
Time is just a freak.
yeah, yeah, I mean, completely.
Robin
But
Hobb.
yeah, I'm trying to think who else has another very long series that's not sort of like a series of standalones, if you know what I mean, like an
Hmm.
overarching series. There's not many.
Yeah, you're right. And then it's crazy though when you do see those super long series become successful, because you know that they're statistically alone on that island, like but how credible that feat is.
Yeah,
um
yeah. that's why, like a series like Game of Thrones. I mean, I love it. I've read all the books multiple times. Um, and like I know, like George can get a bit of a bad rap because
Oh, I
he
don't think
hasn't
anything
finished.
negative towards George.
No, but he's such an incredible writer, and the story is so incredible, and the way he weaves everything through. I mean, he is such a talent. I just like I pray that he does finish it. I really hope he does. I would love to
Yeah,
read the next book.
most of the people that I could name off, and where people want the last book, they're all very incredible writers. So I never throw shade on anyone, and I don't like when other people do. But
No,
I
no,
can also understand why someone would want someone to finish a series. So it's kind of like being in the middle and understanding both sides that I like to do.
yeah.
Um, but Shauna, I want to thank you for an excellent conversation. This went quite deep in the areas that I wasn't very familiar with, and I have a lot to go back and learn and write down. And I just want to thank you for spending an hour and 10 minutes with me on the channel. I really appreciate you.
Oh, no worries at all. Thank you so much for bringing me on to chat. And it was yeah, it was like a bit of a different chat to what I normally have. It was a bit more conversational, which again is actually what I like to listen to. So yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. So all the links that and any link that anybody would need to, purchase your work or follow you, your socials, all in your link tree.
All in my link tree and or at my website. So my
Oh,
website's very simple to remember. It's just www.shaunalawless.com.
I have the links
And
below too.
yeah, yeah, so that's perfect. And if you want to follow me and know what I'm up to, I'm on most social medias, but my newsletter is really where you get all the good information and all the links for pre-sales and special editions and anything like that. And I normally put that out monthly, so you get a bit of an update what I'm up to and where my books are and what I'm working on and all that.
Excellent, excellent. I've provided that all below, guys. Thank you for all that you were here during the live conversation uh, as well as those who will watch the replay. Of course, all the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'm terrible with scheduling, so I'll have to let you know the next chat that I have. Again, Shauna Lawless, thank you so much for sharing your experience and inspirations, and I can't wait to have you on again.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on.
Bye bye, guys.
Dark